Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to share with you some final thoughts and comments that I have with respect to this set from the Criterion collection, which is Essential Fellini. So it's been my great pleasure and honor to have been able to share with you over the course of a number of videos on this channel some thoughts and comments that I have about the set here, Essential Fellini. And I admit that I'm not a Fellini expert, and I'm not capable of speaking to the films of Fellini with the attention and care that they all deserve. But I do also want to say that I think the set is excellent. The collection of films are really worth it, especially to anyone who is a Fellini fan. But the purpose of this video today is to talk about a number of other things about this set. The first of which being the booklets that are included. Now we have the two booklets here. The first one I want to talk to you briefly about is this blue one, which is called Essential Fellini Essays. And this is about 144 pages or so. Book that is a collection of photos and essays, starting with an introduction by Bilge Biri, and then an essay called Dreams and Reality, Primary Sources by Michael Almereyda, and then Rome and Rimini, Imagined Homes by Colm Tóibín, and then Angels and Demons, Life on Earth by Carol Morley, and then Women and Men, Tough Love by Stephanie Zaharek, and then Life and Death, There Is No End by Kogo Nada. And so these are each talking about specific aspects and facets of the career of Fellini and the concerns and themes that are dealt with in the filmography of Fellini. And so we have, for example, primary sources dealing with the overall arc of the trajectory of Fellini's filmography, with each of the films being spoken about. And then we have Imagined Homes talking about this relationship between Fellini and Rimini, and also between Fellini and Rome, or Roma, that we've seen expressed in a variety of modes and fashions in a lot of his great work in this box set. And then we have Life on Earth, which is a discussion of the use of religion and religious imagery, and also themes that are related to good and evil, the sacred and the profane, the religious and the non-religious, the faithful and the non-faithful. And this is also to suggest this idea of duality or juxtaposition that I think we have identified in a lot of Fellini's works. So this is a great continuation, or not just a continuation, it's a great discussion of this particular important aspect of Fellini's career and cinema. And then we have the essay Tough Love, which is focusing on the depiction of women and female characters in the film. And I really am taken by this essay because it really goes at one of the aspects of Fellini's cinema that is I think very memorable, which is the way in which he depicts his female characters and the kinds of female characters that are in variety, or not variety, in all of his films. And there's a way that Zaharek is writing about it. For example, there's a section on the bottom of page 114 where she says, male geniuses often think they're entitled to more than one woman, and we can suppose that Fellini felt that way too, at least based on scenarios he worked out for Mastorna in La Dolce Vita and 8½. But what we see in these films and in Mastroianni's performances is hardly unchecked sexual egotism. In fact, it's the opposite. Fellini scrutinized his own nature until it was scraped raw. His self-questioning vibrates in every frame. And I thought that was very telling reading of this particular aspect of Fellini's cinema. Because no matter how we see it, I think we can still see, as I was trying to indicate earlier, this idea of depictions of ideas about sexuality and sex that are very honest. And it's this honest portrayal that I think is at the heart of this particular description by Saharik, and I think it's a well-written description. So this is an example of, I think, how this essay is treating this aspect of his career. And then the last essay is called There Is No End. And this is a very interesting way, a very well-written way to talk about the sort of integration between the self and cinema. And there's a wonderful phrase that it includes, which is, there is no end, there is no beginning, there is only the infinite passion of life, Fellini. So that is the booklet of essays, plus a number of, as I say, stills and photographs, and also poster art and the like. So this is a great collection book as part of this Blu-ray set. And then we have this, which is this guide to the films for the Essential Fellini set, text by Professor David Forgash. And so we've seen, of course, David Forgash provide a number of texts in past individual releases for Fellini's films, and also he appeared, for example, in the supplements for La Dolce Vita. And so we have his great text for all the films that are included here, and they're wonderful, wonderful essays. So this is so worth it. Please check this out as well if you can. So that's the essays, and those are the booklets. And as you can see, they're very robust, very helpful. And then if we go to the set itself, I think we can now talk about what perhaps might be seen to be maybe some criticisms of the set, at least those that I have. Now, I should be very clear, I think the set is marvelous. I think it's absolutely marvelous, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. But we also have to remember that it is essential Fellini, but it's not complete Fellini. And that it means that, of course, we're not getting a number of his works that we will have to get elsewhere if we want to aim or endeavor to be complete as far as Fellini's works are concerned. So, for example, we don't get his segment in Love in the City. We also don't get his segment from Boccaccio 70. We also don't get we get the segment Toby Dammit, but we don't get the entire film, Spirits of the Dead. So if you are interested in these works so far, you're going to have to look elsewhere, like some of these other releases that I'm showing. We also don't get the film The Clowns, which is one of my favorite films. I think it's such a delightful film by Fellini, so it's a shame that we don't get that. Although we do get some references to it in some of the supplemental materials in terms of academics and scholars and experts talking about his works. We also don't get Fellini Casanova. And so that's also very conspicuous, especially because there is reference to it being made, in particular and quite memorably, by Donald Sutherland himself in the documentary I'm a Born Liar. So, but we don't get that. So if you're looking for this, you're going to have to go elsewhere. We also don't get orchestra rehearsal. So that's a shame, because this is another interesting examination of this line of cinema that we've seen in Roma and also in Intervista, etc., and also Fellini Director's Notebook. So there are other possibilities of getting this, but outside of the set. And also we don't get City of Women as well. And so if you're interested in this continuation of the working relationship between Fellini and Mastroianni, then this is another stop along the way. And we also don't get the film, which is Ginger and Fred. Here I have an older DVD of this. And so this is a shame too, because there are actually some references made to this film, and also to Fellini's views on the effects of television in the 80s on Italian cinema. And this is, I think, speaking to that kind of theme. And also it brings back into the world of Fellini cinema Marcello Mastroianni and Giulietta Mazzina. And it's a delightful film as well. So if you can find it, I recommend it wholeheartedly. But that's another one that we don't get. And also we don't get the final film from Fellini, The Voice of the Moon. But if you're looking for that, you can find it, for example, in this version, which I have from Arrow. So as you can see, there are a number of titles that we don't get. And so if you're looking for a more complete examination of the rest of Fellini's output, you're going to have to look outside of the Criterion collection. And also I should say that this title, as much as I love the title, it does say, it says Essential Fellini, which might be maybe an unintentional way of describing all the films that aren't included in the set as being non-essential. And I don't think Criterion meant anything in that way, but I should point out that even the films that aren't included are, I would say, very essential in their own way. So if you're interested in a further exploration of Fellini's works, please check out some of the other options that are hopefully available to you. In case you're interested, there are these, and I'm sure there are many other options along the way, so please check that out as well. I should also point out that one of the very interesting and curious episodes and chapters of Fellini's professional career is with respect to a film that was unmade, which is referred to as The Voyage of G. Mastorna, or the Journey of G. Mastorna. And we do see some references to this episode of Fellini's career in, say, Fellini Director's Notebook, or the documentary Marcello Mastroianni, I Remember, and other areas. But I think it would have been really fascinating if there could have been, say, a new Criterion-produced supplement where we had someone, an expert in Fellini or a scholar, speak specifically to this particular part of Fellini's career, and what were the circumstances, what was the story about, and what ended up happening. If that had been included, I think that would have been so cool and so helpful. There are other materials that are available outside of the Criterion collection in terms of texts, in terms of documentaries that were made. So if you are interested, you can find those, maybe searching online or elsewhere. But anyway, this is, I think, a really important aspect of Fellini's career, excuse me. And so although we don't get a Criterion supplement of that nature, we do still get references to it here and there in the other supplements. And also we do get a reference to it in the text by Professor Forgash. So, but that's something to keep in mind. And I suppose I could say, last but not least, this is a set that presents the films in chronological order. It's one of these sets, too, that has the discs in these cardboard sleeves, and I know some people don't mind those, other people do mind them, and so if you are concerned about that, maybe you might have to get some extra separate cases, etc. So that's something to keep in mind. But this is a kind of trend that we see in other large box sets from Criterion, from the Bergman set to the Godzilla set to the Agnes Varda set. So but just keep that in mind as well. But those, I think, are my criticisms of the set, but they don't take anything significantly away from the overall impact of the set for me, which I think it went such a long way in terms of a gathering of many of his films in one place. And as I indicated in some parts of the video, I think this examination in chronological order, plus watching the supplements along the way, really helped me to be able to identify the themes and concerns and the development and evolution, if you will, of his filmography over time, which is vast. It spans many years, and it's also quite distinct. There are certain ways that you can view his filmography in terms of chapters or periods or eras, depending on who he's working with, depending on the time period, and depending on his mood and his place in cinema. And so we can see some distinctions being made with, say, the films from the early 50s versus the films in the early 60s, and then the films in the late 60s, and the films in the 70s, and then the 80s, of course. But along the way also, this set helps me to recognize, too, that there are some continuity threads throughout everything. And I think that is, again, a further indication of how brilliant Fellini was as a filmmaker, an artist, and a poet of cinema. So I think this set really helps me to identify those. I'm very grateful to have been able to get this and to have been able to explore the films. And plus, of course, this is a set that one can visit and revisit again. So that's something that I always encourage people to do, is to watch and rewatch and rewatch. And I can say this from my own personal experience that my initial viewing of 8.5 was not such a positive experience, but upon rewatch and rewatch over time, it became one of my favorite films. And so Fellini films are like that. They have this way of awakening something, or reawakening something in me, and they continue to teach me, and they continue to show me things that I might not have been able to see before. And that's not to say that I understand everything. There are many, many things, so many things that I don't understand about this, but that is part of the appeal and charm of watching these films and being immersed in the world, because you know that you're in the hands of this supreme artist whose imagination is boundless and whose powers of creativity are very much unparalleled. You are in the hands of the maestro, that is Federico Fellini. And so that is, in essence, my thoughts and comments about this Criterion set called Essential Fellini. Okay, my friends, so that's it. So thank you very much for sticking around and for being patient with me. And I really appreciate your time and support and inspiration. It really means a lot. Really does. So thank you, and until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much for your time. As always, I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.